You're enjoying the Friday and, of course, some NCAA basketball, so maybe you're taking some time out to listen to our presentation today on how to develop award-winning publications. My name is Scott Novak. I'm the president of TWG+, and I also have on the line Stacy Gato, who is the vice president at Averett University. And Stacy, thank you so much for taking part in our presentation today.
Thank you so very much, Scott. Welcome, everyone.
So I will make sure that we keep this at a reasonable time frame. We're probably looking between 30 and 45 minutes. And our topic today is to discuss how to develop award-winning publications, and we're going to focus on our work with Averett University and the development of those publications. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about our vision for how to go about developing these types of publications. And I looked around and tried to find a quote that I felt really represented our belief on creativity and design and developing these types of communications. And I found this one, which I really love, which is creative without strategy is called art, and creative with strategy is called advertising. Now, to be honest, if I were to change this to the way I would like to have it written, I would cross out the word advertising, and I would write the word, and sorry for my penmanship here, but I would write the word smart. Reason being is that any time that you go into the development of publications, it's important to understand what the goal is at the end of the day. What are you trying to get out of these publications? Everyone wants to have nice publications that they can send out to their prospects or whatever your constituents are. However, to know the results and what you're trying to get out of that really is what should be the driver for the development of that. And a lot of our presentation today will focus on some decision-making ideas that were done both by us and by Averett University in collaboration in developing their publications, and then also providing you with some ideas, some strategic ideas on how to develop effective publications in working with a number of other colleges and universities. So with that, I'll get started. A little bit about me. My name is Scott Novak, president of TWG. I have been with TWG Plus since our inception back in 2007. Prior to that, I was with a company called Stein Communications in Atlanta, Georgia, which was also in the higher education marketing space. And I have presented this topic about developing image-enhancing, award-winning publications at numerous conferences. And to be quite honest, I work with a lot of small schools, small private liberal arts colleges, but also regional state institutions. So a number of them in the Northeast, in the Southeast as well, and all around. So that's my background. And I want to let Stacy introduce herself and talk a little bit about her experience as well.
Thank you very much, Scott. As you mentioned, I'm Stacy Gato, and I have the pleasure of being the Vice President for Enrollment Management here at Averett University. I've spent 20 years in higher education. I've been at, as you can see on the screen, small and mid-sized private institutions. My trajectory into my current role has been a little bit different. I've had the opportunity to be involved in every aspect of enrollment, from being a registrar and overseeing student registration and financial services, financial aid, building admissions offices, and I worked at a small mid-sized private institution up in New England called the University of New England, where I had the opportunity to oversee enrollment processes for 6 colleges, health professions, liberal arts. And really, I think the crux of everything that I've done has been based upon data and utilizing data for solutions. I think that one of my favorite questions, I recite numbers all the time, and I'm sure I'll find a way to share some with you today. But many times people say, well, so what? What's the so what of that? And certainly being able to take action when you see the data. And so I absolutely have a strong belief that data should drive the decisions. And thank you, Scott, so very much. I've had the pleasure of working with TWG Plus for the past almost 2 years. And I would like to take all of the credit for Averett, but I can't possibly. There's a team with, we have a communications liaison in addition to our director of admissions, who I get to work with side by side as well in this partnership.
Great. Thank you, Stacy.
My pleasure.
So just to give you an idea of, we're talking about award-winning publications, and getting awards are great and all, but at the end of the day, in our work with the schools that we serve, and it should be whoever you work with, or whether it's an internal staff or an external company, the goal is to actually achieve the goals that you set out, whether that's enrollment goals, whether that's more students, better students, whatever the case may be. But just to give you an idea of some of the publication awards that we have earned over the years, Averett and us were able to get the Best of Show Award in the Higher Education Marketing Report last year for our suite of publications, and obviously the reason why we have them on the call today, and also won that award back a couple years back with Marymount Manhattan College. And in this year, we achieved 22 total awards for the Higher Education Marketing Report, which are 5 golds, and you can see the statistics there. What I think is important about that is not necessarily the awards, but when so many submissions are sent in from a number of different schools and companies and everything else, the fact that we receive some of these awards means that whatever we sent stood out. And when you're communicating with your prospects or your students, that's what's the most important part of this. They are, as you all know, are inundated with information and publications from a number of different schools. So having the ability to stand out is what's going to set your publications apart. And that is a common theme that I'll talk about today in this presentation, and ways in which you can do that. And here's the agenda that we'll go through. Learning about yourself and following up on what I just spoke about, that's the most important aspect of all of this, is to do the research on the front end, to understand what students are listening to, what they respond to. That helps drive the publications that you develop. Dare to be different. We'll talk a little bit about some things that there are some schools out there, whether they're with us or things that we have seen in the marketplace that are being very different, and wanted to share some of their great ideas too. We'll talk then, focus on the case study of Averett University and our experience in working with them and developing their publications. And at the end, we'll wrap up with some tips to develop your own award-winning publications. So learning about yourself. You would think it would be a very easy thing to do, and it is. The very fortunate thing about colleges and universities is you have access to your to the students that you try to recruit on a daily basis. They're on your campus. And so it's a great way to develop maybe some focus groups, ask students about what they want to receive. Freshmen are still, they have it fresh in their mind as to what they were communicated by in their process of learning about your institution. So we recommend conducting focus groups at any point during the process to make sure what you're doing is resonating with your students. One thing also, take notes at college fairs. See what other students are picking up as they walk by the tables, and then maybe grab whatever they're picking up from that particular institution. Not that you have to mirror what they're doing, but they might provide you with some ideas. Obviously, this, I'm sure, something that you all do, which is get on mailing lists of your competitors, understand what they're sending to their prospects to get a feel for how you can better compete with them. What we do for every school that we do a communication audit for is we take down everything on our wall and we put every publication that a school sends us onto a wall to understand how well it integrates, how impactful these communications are. Do these publications pop? Are students going to receive them in their mailbox and be excited about it? And we take a picture of it, and then we, as a creative staff, we look at that and we make recommendations just based on first glance and how it all works together. And if possible, if you have the ability to do it, you can do it on your own through tools like SurveyMonkey and everything else, or you can work with outside firms. Conduct a prospective student survey before you even engage in developing new publications. A lot of times when you can do that, the information that you get back, as Stacy and I discussed early on, that type of data can really drive your creative direction. So I wanted to show a couple of example slides of student surveys, questions that you might want to ask. And just so you know, this presentation will be available to anyone on this call after. We will send it out to you, so you'll have this information. But ask the following. Examine students' perceptions of your attributes and their importance in the selection process. Obviously, one of the most important questions that you can ask. Examine what sources of information that they use to evaluate their institutional options. A lot of times in this question, you will find it'll run the gamut from publications to social media to all different types of avenues. Determine their level of familiarity with your school. That question will help drive how impactful and how cutting edge do you really need to be. If they don't have a level of familiarity with your school, you really need to push the envelope creatively. Measure your perception of your school and get opinions regarding your strengths and weaknesses. That will drive your content development. And then compare awareness and perceptions of prospective students toward your school versus your competitors. If you get information and you're on mailing lists for your competitors, and you're understanding what they're sending out, and then you're getting feedback on this survey about students and your competitors and their view of your competitors, that should help drive your decision making. Okay, so here's an example of a school that sent out, and at the end of these 3 slides, I'll show you sort of the concept that we, along with that school, came up with a concept. The feedback we got for them, now the numbers are fairly even, but we felt with this school in particular that graduates get good jobs after graduation. Nothing earth-shattering, but it did show as the top reason as to why they were interested in the school and what was the most important thing they were looking at as far as their attribute. So that really helped drive the creative and the selection of the types of communications that we sent out. I think we have a question. The question is, what is a good time of year to send out a perception survey? Great question. I think a good time to send it out actually would be now, because if you're developing a publication set, if you were to send a survey out now, and it's middle of March, maybe a couple weeks late, but if you could get feedback back within, say, 2 to 3 weeks, you still have time to creatively develop a really good suite of publications to launch next fall. So now is the right time to do it. If that is not possible, you could still maybe edge it into April or so and still have time over the summer to develop a good suite of publications. If that's not possible, then I would wait until the fall. All right. The next one is, again, not a big surprise. It's circled here at college websites. Every single survey that we send out, this is on the top. So I know that a website is always a hot button with a lot of schools, and clearly you need to have a great website. But I think for this one in particular, the second one we found very interesting. Friends were the second part or second best way in which schools were learning about this particular school. So this feedback said to us, we're going to need to come up with some communications that engage friends, and we'll show you what we did in a second. We have another question. Oh, there was a thank you. Thank you, Catherine. So ABC publications and communications. This actually asked what was important and how did they feel that they learned about the school. So we had a pretty good response as far as their publications were concerned. So that played into our development of the publication set. And so the results out of this survey, and this is, again, very condensed into 3 slides. There were a lot of different feedback points that we got, but I needed to condense this, obviously, for this presentation. But essentially, what we came up with was to develop an outcomes brochure and do a lot of profiles in their view book, because the research told us that graduation rates and student profiles and outcomes were so important in the decision-making process. So that was a key differentiator for us in developing this suite of publications for this school. And secondly, we developed a very robust social media strategy. As I mentioned on that second slide where friends was circled, you'll notice that that was a very important way in which they were learning about the school. So social media is a great way to engage their friends. So the social media strategy was put into place that wasn't just posting, but was responding to various posts on the social space. And then the third one was we didn't actually have a huge departure from their current publications. We really felt that because the feedback was so positive about the work that they had received, the prospective students has received, we didn't really want to change it all that much. We made some tweaks and we focused really on the different communication sets. But overall, the design and look and feel changed, but it wasn't a complete departure because the feedback we got was so positive. So again, very brief overview of what we might do, but just some examples there. On daring to be different, I think, Stacy, you would agree that we tried some different things with the Averett publications, in particular your view book. So on the second point here where it says consider odd sizes, we developed, what was it, Stacy, probably about 13 by 15 size view book. It's pretty big. Yes,
we did.
Yeah,
and that also, the presence is there. And, we know that we're not just competing to catch the students' eyes with our materials, but their parents as well. And it's really hard to avoid that larger publication coming at them.
Exactly, and that is sent at a very key time of the process. Obviously, that is an application driver. So the view book, and we get this question a lot from schools: do we really still need a printed view book? Our response to that would be yes, because parents still use it. However, the view book, the role of the view book has definitely changed. It used to be more of a catalog. Now it really needs to be just a high-level, impactful, a lot of photography, not a lot of content piece, sort of a coffee table type piece that students and parents can look at, and the goal of that really is to get them to apply. So the third part of being different is a lot of times when we engage with a school, we will audit the comm flow. Even if we're not doing any of the communication flow type mailings, it's good to know what they're sending out and when. And there may be times that are non-traditional, quote-unquote, times in which you might want to consider sending various pieces where other schools are not. So there is definitely a very traditional comm flow that seems to be used by most schools, that if you take off times in which students typically don't get materials, it's a good time to actually send them materials. So that, again, will engage them a little bit more because they're so inundated with information. We also would recommend trying one new idea every year, but find a way to measure that. So if there's a way, if you have a new idea for a publication, you want to send that out, figure out a way to measure it. Did it increase open house attendance? Did it help student response? Were you getting more hits on your website in a week in which that may have been hitting? So those are the types of things that find ways to measure to see if your ideas worked. Some other great ideas. Now you're going to look at this slide and probably raise some eyebrows, especially about the first one. But one school in particular, their mascot was a buccaneer. And they came up with the idea to send out a scented postcard asking the students to inquire about what a buccaneer might actually smell like. Sounds a little strange, but to be quite honest, it was received extremely well. And this is a school that takes a lot of chances, and their enrollment is through the roof. And I commend them on they're taking a little bit of a chance here, and it was a really good mailing and a great idea. Another one, we had a school did a coupon for parking and a bookstore discount. So they sent out their view book, but in there they put a big coupon for a parking pass and a 15% discount at their bookstore, which again was received very well, and they were able to track that because they would collect the coupons from the bookstore. One school sent out an activity-based mailer with various stickers that they asked the student to design something based on the book of stickers that they got and send it back. Now, it was an art school, but at the end of the day, it was a great idea because it engaged the students in a way that got them to respond, and it was a great measurable tactic, and it worked out very well for them. The fourth point is a digital experience, which is one of the ones I'm going to show you on the next slide, and we'll get to that in a second. Another school here that you can see pictured actually sent out an acceptance packet that was a Rubik's Cube that was scrambled, and the student had to then put the Rubik's Cube back together and then take a picture and tweet it out and use social media to show that they were able to do it. The sixth one here is augmented reality. There's a number of schools that are utilizing this right now, and if anyone doesn't know what augmented reality is, basically what you do is you download an app on your phone or your iPad, and you can put it up to an image or a marker on various publications that a school might send out, and it will play a video for the students. So one school did this with an acceptance poster. They put their phone up to the acceptance poster, and it played a video saying, "Congratulations on your acceptance to your institution." So it was a great way to integrate technology into the development of a paper publication. And then finally, integrate technology. And this is one thing that Averett did very well in their production of their publication series. They have a digital view book, but they also used other technologies to enhance their publication set. So I talked about that digital experience. I wanted to show you an example. Kalamazoo College in Michigan decided to abandon their print view book in lieu of a digital experience. So it was a great idea. It was very unique, but it was more of a game that they created. So I'm going to show you just the intro to this as well as the first phase of the game. Okay, the intro is not loading on my system, but so basically what they do sometimes with the webinar, sometimes the videos don't load well. So what they do here is it is a game where they go through the campus, and you have the ability to select either, if you've ever seen a Jib Jab video, you can take a picture of yourself and put it onto a selfie, and you actually see yourself going through the campus, or you can select the Hornet Buzz, who's here, who I'm going to use that for demonstration purposes. And don't mind the music. It's different. So Buzz is going through the campus here, and at the end, at various spots within the campus, he can jump onto the sign, and up will pull a video that I'll show you here. So that was an example of, while it's not a quote-unquote publication, it was used in lieu of a printed piece and was sent to all of their seniors. Now, it's not something that you go to their website and get. It's not something that they send to every student. It is held back for their top students or their seniors to get them to apply. They still do have printed publications that they send, but I thought they did a great job of developing this digital experience. The other piece that you'll see on here is St. John's University, and they had developed an acceptance poster that had used that augmented reality that I spoke to you about earlier. But it also, they encouraged, or we, along with St. John's, encouraged students to post their pictures of themselves with their acceptance poster online through social media. So talking about engaging friends, how to use a printed publication to drive other types of communications is what we did with St. John's. It was very effective. So students would take pictures of themselves with their acceptance poster, and who then would see it? Their friends, their parents' friends, and then it became this sort of viral sensation. It was a great way to engage prospective students that way. So now we can get into the Best of Show award that we received for Averett University and talk a little bit about the experience there and how we came up with the campaign that we did. And hopefully in talking about this, you'll come up with some ideas to develop some publications on your end as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Stacy to talk a little bit about Averett.
Thank you again, Scott. Averett University, as you can see, we have a total enrollment of about 1,900 students. I think one of the challenges in higher education today, I'm sure I don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but the swirl and the changes in higher education just are happening so incredibly fast. And so we were originally a women's liberal arts institution and have made very intentional decisions over the years. We were founded in 1859 to really think about diversity. And as we brought men in and we have football, we also have done that same sort of internal examination of what are the programs that are in demand within our region and even nationally. So you can imagine being originally a liberal arts institution with programs in aviation, equestrian studies, criminal justice, and nursing. We could really be a handful for our friends over at TWG, Scott and Jeremy. And then add to that some of our signature programs in physical education, biology, business, and nursing. And so with all of those components, how do we make this communication process work? And how do we get that message out and try to appeal to as many different types of students as we can? And so I think that really sets a nice backdrop. We're located in Danville, Virginia, which is in south central Virginia. We are literally the last city in the middle of the state, right on the North Carolina border. So we're often also competing for North Carolina students. And throughout our relationship together, you know, I think as you were presenting, Scott, what really resonated with me are the cutting-edge technologies that you are integrating into the marketing plan for specifically Averett, but certainly for other schools that you work with as well. And believe me, we'll be sitting down. I'd like to use some of those ideas in next year's publication. But
Sure.
But we'll talk. And we're located about 4 hours away from Scott and Jeremy, and we meet once or twice a year. But
2 hours, Stacy, come on.
Yeah, I know. It depends on who's driving.
That's right.
But I think that our communication, we meet typically weekly, a check-in to see how we're doing, and it just brings such smiles to all of our faces when Scott or Jeremy share, gosh, this performed really well. What if we did this? Or how are things looking on your end? They are weekly recipients of our weekly report to see that our numbers are up 20 to 30% this year. And I think that's another piece of it. It's because we're not static. Our relationship is not based upon this very static plan. We leave room to be creative. We leave room to, in case we're seeing numbers in a direction or we want to make sure that we've communicated a new event that we're planning, we always leave room for that. So again, I think it's the dynamic relationship that has really, and your excitement and performance with Averett, I think has been a key piece to the success. Oh, I did not know you'd be sharing these. Isn't that exciting?
Yes.
That's proof.
So Stacy was talking about that, some of the improvements and, things that they've done, and I think that it's not just publications. It's really the work that they've done as a staff and our work with them to really get the numbers that they're looking for. So you can see on here the increases that they've achieved this year. And, I don't know about you, Stacy, but I think one of the most important numbers here really is the fact that you've actually increased your denied, and that shows that they're getting better students on top of it. So I think it's all very positive.
Absolutely, and I'm so excited to share that. This is a very humble moment in Virginia right now as another liberal arts institution announced that it would be closing. And it's one of those moments where you have to take a hard look at yourself and make sure that you are getting out the information, understanding where your successes are as an institution, certainly, and where your challenge areas may be. And that's why this partnership is so critical to Averett's future, no question. And I was so delighted through these conversations to be able to share these kinds of numbers and help give confidence to what we're doing, why we're doing it. And I also just want to state, I mentioned that I really love to make data-driven decisions. And the market research that was conducted prior to the launch of our materials was truly unparalleled. And I think that's a huge testament as we move forward and as we're looking at each recruitment cycle, making sure that we understand our brand. I know that sounds simplistic, but it truly is the crux of how you can move forward and understanding that there are so many demands to be all things to all students that it really has helped focus our efforts and our initiatives.
Yep, thanks, Stacy. So the role of that publications played really in their communications and outreach really was that previously they had just done some postcards and some emails, and this I think is fairly standard. We work with probably a number of large state institutions that in the past their communication flow has had been predominantly postcards and emails and things. And we're able to come in and talk about ways in which we can enhance the communication, develop some different types of publications that really make the institution have a different voice, a different vision, a different place in the marketplace. So I think that was important. Whether it's a small school, whether it's a large state school, really doesn't matter. The goal really is to make sure that the message that you're sending out, the new brand that you're developing, or if the publications are part of the whole mix, that you're really talking about the vision and the growth of the school. So we're able to do that, especially here, as you can see with Averett. We developed a real higher-end look than what they had had. They had not really had a view book, or they had not had an outcomes brochure or a parents piece before. So those types of communications really enhance the overall communication of the institution. It was a larger initial investment, but at the end, as you saw with the numbers, it really did pay off. But they also, I think, Averett, collectively, I think we did a good job of segmenting the communications. So our predictive model, a lot of schools will use predictive model to dictate name purchases for search and things like that. But for us, we use a predictive model to dictate the communication flow so that we could really work within the budget parameters that had been set forth. So it might not have made the most sense to send a view book to every single student that was in the inquiry pool, but maybe through a predictive model, we could segment that and send it to the most likely to apply students. And in turn, as you saw with the numbers, it was a very effective way to go about it. They were saving money on postage and printing and all those types of things. So it was really important that we did that. And the two images that you see here, one on the left-hand side is the digital view book that we developed for Averett, which I think, if I click on, we'll show here. And the nice part about this digital view book, if I can get it back here, is that it is built from the phone out. So you'll see a lot of movement on this, but if you're really to see it on your phone is where you really see the advantage of it. And I think if you're developing a digital view book or digital type publications, if in-house or however you're doing it, make sure you consider that you should be developing this from the phone outward. So what drove the creative in the development for the Averett publication series? Number one, and when we did our campus research and we asked some students about what was really the reason that they attended Averett, a lot of them said we felt that as freshmen and sophomores we could get involved and really be doing things that with most other schools we would have to wait until junior or senior year. So for example, they have an aviation program and an equestrian program, and those are just two examples of where students could really get involved as a freshman or sophomore. Now I found it a little scary that freshmen could drive a plane as a freshman, but nonetheless at Averett they can do that, right, Stacy?
Absolutely, year-round.
That's right. So that was a unique distinctive of Averett. And you hear the phrase learning by doing all the time. Most schools say it. But Averett really put it into play with the ability to have freshmen and sophomores get involved. It was a fairly standard message that I think we were able to position very creatively. So you'll see on the cover of that view book, Your Time Is Now, there was that now message was kind of a subliminal message to prospects. So throughout all of our publications, any type of communication that was sent out, that word now was driven into the heads of the prospective students to apply now, inquire now, visit now. So the word now sort of became, in essence, sort of a brand tagline in a way, that Averett was, you had the ability to do things now, and it was a now type of institution, which you can see again in the results has really paid off for them. We got a lot of feedback on the role, the important role of parents, and we get that a lot at most schools. But for Averett in particular, we really wanted to have a communication series to parents to make sure that they know that the investment was worth it for their son or daughter. We use very large, impactful images because we, in order to maximize the photography, we wanted to make sure that the images were used in a very impactful way, which we're able to do. And one of the things that really stood out, and Stacy, we've talked about this, which was very unique for the Averett campaign, was that a lot of the images that we took were taken from the student perspective. So, for example, you might see in one of the images the cockpit of a plane with the student hands on the steering wheel as if the student was taking the picture. Same thing as if they were riding a horse. You'd see them holding the reins in their hands, but you don't see the face of the student. So it had a very unique perspective for a prospect when they saw, and they can envision themselves as a prospect at Averett. I have a question. How do you feel about sub-brands or using a different look and feel for a particular campaign or for a specific target demo, one that looks different from your overall brand? Stacy, I'll let you respond because you have a number of different sub-brands, with the graduate department field and everything else. But at the end of the day, if there is some level of integration, I think would be great. But sometimes when you need to segment your market and your communications, there's a need to do that, especially if you have a different message. So, Stacy, I don't know what you want to add on that.
Oh, I'm delighted to. I'm so excited to share that after we had launched our materials for traditional undergraduate admissions, our advancement office was so incredibly impressed that they absolutely emulated these same traits and characteristics of the publications and the feel of what we had done thus far. We're still working towards that on the adult non-traditional student end, but what we're finding is that we can achieve, we want to differentiate. We know that there's obviously such a difference between what the non-traditional student and the traditional student wants, but we're really working at redefining what our style guide needs to be for our institution and utilizing data again, and how do we wed those. So we haven't completely mastered it across the institution, but I would say that within the traditional undergraduate audience and populations, we are definitely working on we've actually integrated it through to the student experience. With our friends over in Student Affairs, we've offered to take on some additional responsibility just so that we could not only manage the brand throughout that critical time in the summer, which I know we're always anxious about those deposits over the summer. It really gave us an opportunity to bring that high-end look throughout our institution. So by no means is it perfected, but we have just made such wonderful strides. I'm confident over the next year we should really have that wrapped up.
Great, thanks, Dave. So what was done strategically in working on the publications for Averett? Number one, we wanted to create a very exciting acceptance package. So you saw the poster that was done for St. John's. We did the same thing for Averett. I think if you're going to emphasize one part of the funnel as far as the creativity of your publications, you really should go do it really well for your accepted students. Those are the ones that are the most likely to enroll and send in their deposit. why not continue to market and recruit and be very creative with them? I think a lot of schools work so hard to get an application in the door and an acceptance that at that point, a lot of the communications become very process-oriented. But for Averett in particular, we wanted to make sure that we continued to market and recruit those students very heavily. Social media integration was key, so we had monthly and weekly meetings actually about integrating social media with the various print communications that were sent out. So if there was an open house, or I think you call them Cougar Preview Days, right, Stacy?
That is correct.
Yes, okay. So I don't remember that. Cougar Preview Days were enhanced with social media posts trying to drive students to that. So it was a very collaborative effort there. Monitored progress, and we adjusted accordingly. As Stacy mentioned when she was talking earlier, about we had weekly phone calls that we would adjust our communications and our recommendations based on how things were looking. We consolidated the Cougar Days into one postcard versus trying to coordinate multiple communications of the various days, which saved on cost for them quite a bit. So I think that was a good strategic move. We also enhanced the road piece. Prior to the road piece that we had done for them, it was almost like a flyer, I would say, more or less. But we wanted something, if a student had, if you have one chance to get a student's interest, the road piece can be a very important printed publication, and so that piece was really enhanced. And as I mentioned earlier, we used the predictive model to dictate communication flow. So what was unique? Why do we think that it got best of show? I think from the student perspective, the imagery, as I mentioned, was a big part of that. The committee that the Higher Education Marketing Report did mention that to me in a discussion, that that's something that really they felt stood out for them. The oversized view book definitely stood out. So if you have the ability to create your central piece in an odd type size, I think it will stand out in the mailbox and stand out to your students as well. The photography was very engaging, so we used a lot of the imagery that Averett came up with, and they had students actually take some photographs, but we also enhanced that with campus photography that we coordinated. And then brand integration and consistency was strong. So that question that came up earlier, it is important to make sure that there's a unified look to some extent, so make sure that there's brand integration and consistency. And I think with the Averett materials, it definitely did that throughout. So how do we accomplish this? And this is our philosophy in working with a small school like Averett, a large state institution like the University of Idaho, or other types of state schools, small schools that we work with around the country. We try to do this by doing these types of things. Number one, we try to replace some traditional type communications with innovative technology. It's important that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, and that requires constant communication with internal staff, with the school that we work with, and with us as a company. We made very strategic decisions that made sense from a budgetary standpoint early on in the process and throughout the campaign as well. I feel that collectively as a group, we targeted the right student, not just everyone. And that goes all the way back to the search campaign development, where we are strategically buying names in a way that makes sense, that they're not spending extra dollars on students that really don't have a likelihood to apply. And I'm going to reiterate it, constant communication with Averett was very important in developing this suite of publications. So, and Stacy, anything you want to add to that?
You know, just briefly, one of the pieces, as you mentioned, Scott, with predictive modeling, the timing of materials and the way that we were able to be very efficient with our resources in terms of precisely what you said, bunching together a publication or bunching our Cougar Preview Days, our open houses, into one piece of information to share with our prospective students. And certainly recognizing that based upon your great efforts, when you could see what the response rates were from prospective students, that we together determined what did we need to look at for a print budget, how many, how often, when are those key times for conversion. And I think that's such a critical component because a lot of folks could say that they could provide the materials, but it's that strategy behind the predictive modeling that truly, truly has made such a significant difference. And the quality of our publications also across the campus. We've really set the gold standard.
You did. Absolutely. And finally, some tips for award-winning publications. And this is just from an outsider's perspective. Number one, and I put this number one on the list, you as people, you know your institution better than any company like us does. So if you're working with an outside vendor, you need to make sure that whoever you bring in works in a collaborative environment. They don't talk about knowing every single answer. You want them to be able to embrace internal staff. Some of our best materials have been in conjunction with schools that have fantastic internal designers that we're able to work as a team together to develop the best publications. We might work with the strategy and the recommended vehicle, but we are going to tap into any type of creative talent that a school might have, whether that be a designer, an in-house copywriter, a PR person, whoever that may be. You've got to work as a team. So that's the most important thing for developing a good publication. Number two, I would say, is getting multiple concepts. One concept is great, but test these concepts too. If you can come up with a concept, you have an internal staff, see if they can do two concepts. Test that through online surveys to see what resonates with students. Number third point, photography is key, and if you have the budget and the money to do it, it is so important to get good photography. In any focus group that we conduct, the number one thing that students respond to are the photographs. That's what they care about. So spend the money on the photography if you're able to do that. Focus test, as we mentioned, you have access to this audience 24 hours a day, most of the time 7 days a week, except in the summer. Test it with your current students. See what they think about it, especially freshmen. Freshmen always are on top of what is unique out there, what they thought was really good. Their minds are fresh as to the communication practices used by other schools. So test that. Take chances. Many schools feel the need to use their the school colors, and you should. But if there's an opportunity to expand the color palette, our designers would say, please try and do that. It really will enhance the look and will be very impactful when the students receive this type of information. And I have another question. I'm new in my position. I want to make some major changes in our materials to freshmen. How do you get buy-in? I keep hearing this is the way we've always done it. I'd like to do some research of our constituents, but I'm told there is no money. That is a very good point, and I got to tell you, we hear that all the time too. And that's why this presentation, hopefully you can maybe use this and say, look, these are some ideas that other schools are using. I think it's important to get buy-in, so find out what other schools are doing. Get on their mailing lists. If you see great ideas, show them around and say, we cannot compete with schools that are doing these types of impactful, creative, strategic type of marketing decisions and communications. I think that's number one. And number two, do focus groups with students on campus. It doesn't cost anything. Offer to buy a couple of pizzas for students. Get them in a room, get them to talk about what they like, what they'd like to receive in the mail, what they enjoyed about as they were a senior in high school, what they really remember, and videotape it and show people, look, this is what students are saying. We should follow what they're telling us, not the way that we've always been done. And I know that's very difficult to do, but any type of feedback that you can get can always help that situation. So I hope that answers your question. The fifth point here, or sixth point, less words, more statistics. That's very true. Students are not reading as much, so a lot of the work that we're developing with schools really cuts down on content. You don't want big pieces like view books and things to be glorified catalogs. You want to have very quick bullet points and statistics that really drive home the key attributes of your institution. If you're going to profile alums, please use young alumni if you're an undergraduate institution. If you're talking from a graduate standpoint, you also want to profile people that just graduated from the graduate program. People want to know immediate return on investment, not what their degree is going to get them 10 or 20 or 30 or sometimes 40 years down the line. You want immediate return on investment in your profiles. And most importantly, strategy should come first. If you get together as a group internally and you sit down to talk about, okay, it's time to do some new publications, the first question you should ask yourselves is, what do we want to get out of this? Is it more enrollment? Is it more students? Is it more inquiries? Whatever the case may be, let that drive your decision making. Let that be the driver, not just, we need to do publications because we feel we need to do it. So that would be some tips for award-winning publications. And one last thing I wanted to just put out there, that Stacy and I are actually going to be doing a presentation at the Small College Enrollment Conference on this topic on July 12th through the 15th. This is not just for small colleges. It is for state institutions, regional state institutions, but it's a great conference, in my opinion, because it talks about a lot of the issues that you have even raised in your questions today that you can get answers for. And it's down in Charleston, South Carolina. I recommend it highly. And I know, Stacy, you too are going to be going and have a great deal of respect for that conference.
Oh, absolutely.
So at this point, I would just like to wrap up and say anything that we've talked to you about today really applies to any type of institution, small school, large school, state school, whatever the case may be. You can use some of these ideas, these tips, and that other schools are doing to engage students in a very strategic, creative fashion. They work anywhere, and we'd be happy to talk to you about that. If you have any questions, feel free to call me or you can email me. My information is located here, and Stacy, I'll let you wrap up with anything you might want to add at this point.
Oh, that's wonderful. I would definitely say please don't hesitate to contact me if you'd like a testimonial regarding the great work that we've done together. And I just wanted to reiterate what you had said, Scott, really embracing your institutional knowledge, your value propositions as an institution. And I cannot speak highly enough of the team at TWG Plus for getting to know Averett, taking the time to listen to what our needs are, and to then be able to just run with it and continuously make great recommendations that we listen to and collaborate on together.
Thank you, Stacy. Your check is in the mail, so thank you for that.
None necessary.
No, I know. But again, I will hang on here for another minute or so. If anyone has any questions, you can ask it in the chat space on the webinar, and I'll be happy to answer that. And I'll just stay on for another minute. If I don't hear any questions or see any questions, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to take part in this webinar today. You are welcome to go back and watch the rest of the NCAA, and enjoy your weekend. We do have a question. Thank you for also showcasing Western. Well, thank you for that. Yes, Western Oregon is one of our better publications. We love that piece, and that was highlighted. That's a great school out in the state of Oregon, so thank you for pointing that out. Let's see, what else? Let's see. When is a good time of year to send out a perception study? I believe that was the question from earlier on, but yes, it was. But again, it would be now if possible, if not in the fall. Well, I don't think we have any more questions, so I'm going to log off. And again, thank you, everybody. Enjoy your weekend, and please call me if you have any, or email me if you have any questions. Take care.